Watch right now on the Front News Project. American Tomahawks will fly towards Moscow.
The Kremlin and Rubliovka should get ready. It's going to hurt a lot. By the way, something has already hit the Moscow region.
Explosions all over Russia, hundreds of strikes. Enemy aircraft are burning. Crimea, many have gotten through.
Oil depots are on fire.
And NATO is also challenging Moscow. Poland will shoot down Russian drones.
Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch right now.
Hello, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. Powerful strikes all across Russia. Tuapse, Novorossiysk, the temporarily occupied Crimea, and so on. Seaports and oil refineries are burning. The occupiers' military equipment is being destroyed. There is only one conclusion here. There are no longer any safe places in the Russian rear. More details about the latest and most striking explosions in Russia are coming up in the report from our colleagues at the television news service.
There's a saying, if an unmanned boat isn't blown up, it blows itself up, destroying, for example, an oil loading dock in the Russian city of Tuapse. Excellent. Thank God it happened there. This week, friendly sea and air drones imposed sanctions on Russia's main Black Sea ports, Novorossiysk and Tuapse. In Novorossiysk, the sniper-like air defense and naval gunners fire so wildly that they end up setting several of their own houses, a hotel, and local cars on fire. The battered remnants of the Black Sea Fleet, instead of defending, are destroying the city they've been hiding in for the third year now. Oh my God, the cars are on fire. Something hit really hard. The air defense in Tuapse is obviously weaker. The port is mainly defended with small arms. Random vacationers are suffering from stray bullets. They picked the worst time to come for the velvet season.
Pollock, here we are, just lying down like this. A bullet is flying over our heads. We just can't make it to the beach. It's flying right over our heads, look. Someone's been wounded.
After a powerful explosion at the Tuapse port, the siren finally goes off. Now Russians also know what an air raid siren sounds like. Did you get it? Got it.
Damn, the shockwave is going to reach us.
In the past 2 weeks, 15 major oil facilities have caught fire in Russia. That's perfect timing, military expert Ivan Stupek notes with a smile.
Right now it's really vacation season, the time when these refineries are taken offline for maintenance. And Ukraine says, good evening, this is your dispatcher. We're checking the condition of your refineries.
If in the summer Ukraine carried out single strikes on Russian oil refining giants, now there is a system to it, notes expert Serhiy Kuyun. And yes, he also agrees the timing couldn't be better.
Time is working against them because they've always had a tough situation at the peak of the season. In August and September, they've always faced a gasoline shortage. And now we've added a bit more at this peak and everything there has started to fall apart.
Analysts from reporting from Ukraine note that Ukraine has managed to turn isolated, irregular attacks into a powerful destruction of Russia's key economic sector. The Samara, Syzran, Saratov, Ilsky and Afipsky oil refineries in the Krasnodar region are burning. Strikes have also been carried out on one of the largest processing enterprises in the Volgograd region. Already 21% of Russia's oil refining capacity has been put out of commission. And the good news is that there's practically nothing left to repair them with. A fuel shortage, especially of gasoline, has hit the south. In Crimea, there's almost none left at all.
There's absolutely no gasoline in the city. There's only diesel. They brought it in at 83.5. The fifth? That's the whole line over there at the gas station. The situation with gasoline, in short, isn't changing. There's no 100, no 95, not even 92. I've only got a range of 40 kilometers left, then that's it.
The shortage that exists in Russia today shows that our people managed to hit exactly where they needed to. Right in those bottlenecks, the most important ones, those are the units at the plant, yes, the technological ones that actually process the oil.
That actually process it for us.
Yeah, well.
The girls are relaxing. But an even thinner thread was found, the one on which the entire oil dollar business of the country's gas stations hangs. And it has become the priority of the new Ukrainian tactics. To destroy not only oil refineries, but also to try to collapse the export of oil products itself, that's what expert Serhiy Kuyun believes.
An oil pumping station is like Koshay's needle, it's a bottleneck. A refinery covers dozens of hectares, people travel around these plants by bus. But what is an oil pumping station? It's a local facility. It's a very convenient target, which is why all those huge tens of millions of tons of oil for export pass through it every month.
Of course, pumping stations are repaired quickly, but they also flare up again just as quickly. And in the near future, Russians may face the problem of what to do with their oil. And the solution might be to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs.
If you mothball a well, you usually can't bring it back online. And if you do manage to restart it, it takes huge amounts of money and time. And it's a kind of roulette. You might be able to restart it or you might not. That's the nightmare of any oil thief.
And while it's not something global, it's very painful for Russians and very beneficial for us, Bavovna. In the past week, several helicopters in Crimea have been permanently grounded.
What do you mean, helicopters?
In Crimea, 2 more transport Antonov 26s have been destroyed, and importantly, 2 maritime reconnaissance aircraft as well. It was precisely these that were preventing our naval drones from operating freely. But perhaps the biggest prize was a fighter jet over Zaporizhzhia that was preparing to drop a guided bomb. These glide bombs, the FABs, are practically the last trump card the Russians have, and we hope we've found a way to counter them. As winter approaches, the Russians will, as usual, try to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Chernihiv was without power for several days. Intimidating the civilian population is a hallmark of Russia. So Russian military aircraft flying over Baltic countries and drones over Scandinavian civilian airports are elements of the same strategy. Europeans, just in case, should take a page from the Ukrainians and shoot down a few Russian planes, says Ivan Stupak, as a preventive measure because Russians only understand force.
And here is another very important piece of news. The legendary American Tomahawks may end up at the disposal of the Ukrainian armed forces. Washington is considering this possibility. And in addition, Trump has given permission to use his long-range weapons on Russian territory. The Kremlin, of course, is reacting to this news very nervously, and I would even say hysterically. All the details are in our report.
An about face of 180 degrees. Very soon, the White House will provide Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance announced this over the weekend in an interview with Fox News. And just 2 days later, U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg confirmed this intention. Donald Trump will allow Ukraine to carry out long-range strikes on Russia.
I think that, having read what he said, as well as what Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio said, the answer is yes. Use the opportunity to strike at long distances. There is nothing sacred about it. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that last week President Zelensky asked President Trump to provide Tomahawk missiles.
Just 2 weeks ago, Trump and his administration were categorically opposed to transferring, let alone to using American Tomahawk missiles to strike Russian territory. But after the meeting between Zelensky and Trump in New York on September 23rd, the White House's rhetoric changed. Ukraine's main argument is that having such missiles could increase pressure on Russia and force Putin to come to the negotiating table, possibly even without actually using this type of weapon. The transfer of Tomahawks also drew a response from the Kremlin. Putin's press secretary Peskov stated that there is currently no magic weapon for Kyiv that can significantly change the overall dynamics on the battlefield.
There is no panacea that can change the situation at the front right now. For the Kyiv regime, there is no magic weapon. And whether it's Tomahawks or other missiles, they won't be able to change the dynamics.
The Tomahawk missile has a range of up to 1,600 kilometers, which significantly exceeds the capabilities of the American HIMARS rocket systems, which are used by the Ukrainian armed forces. The Tomahawk has greater speed and combat power compared to Ukrainian drones, which are capable of striking deep into Russian territory, but often encounter modern Russian air defense systems.
It's a bad message for the military and those who support them who are located in the Bryansk, Kursk, Voronezh, and Rostov regions at the very least. And of course in the occupied territories, wherever there are enemy military facilities. I think the demilitarization of Crimea from Russian presence will also continue. And Donetsk is occupied, and Luhansk there will be even more strikes on them.
President Zelensky handed President Trump a list of the necessary military aid as part of a $90 billion agreement. Ukraine also wants to hold separate negotiations with the US regarding the supply of specific types of weaponry, particularly long-range systems.
All of this is provided for in our $90 billion agreement. But we are ready for separate agreements on specific types of weaponry, including long-range systems. I can't share any more details.
I can't provide any more details.
According to the British publication The Sun, Ukrainian attacks on the oil refining sector alone have caused Russia damage amounting to more than $100 billion. And that's not even counting the missile strikes. And once those appear, the amount of damage will increase many times over.
And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the Pokrovsk front. The enemy army is acting true to form here as well. On the Pokrovsk front, our defenders repelled 59 enemy assaults in the areas of the following settlements: Vladimirovka, Nikonorovka, Krasny Liman, Suketskaya, Novoekonomicheskaya, Nikolaevka, Lisovka, Zverevo, Kotlina, Udaknaya, Novonikolaevka, Kotliarovka, and Dakhnaya. And now things are truly frightening. A missile and drone attack by Putin's war criminals targeted Kyiv and the Kyiv region. Kyiv residents are bringing flowers and toys to the house in the Solomiansky district of the capital, where Russia killed a 12-year-old girl. In total, 4 people were killed by the Russians during yet another combined attack. Civilian homes in the Kyiv region also came under drone and missile strikes. An entire street was destroyed by the blast wave there. KTSN correspondent Alina Lisova visited the sites of the attacks. Let's watch.
A hole instead of a wall and charred walls. This is what a 5-story building in the Solomiansky district of the capital looks like, where during yet another massive attack, the Russians hit with a drone. The enemy strike hit the 3rd and 4th floors. Neither the facade nor the floors could withstand it. At that very moment, the resident's apartment was engulfed in flames.
It went in for the attack and I fell to the floor. There was an explosion. People started shouting that the doors were blocked. I managed to get dressed. I unblocked mine and then unblocked theirs. They ran out and we all went downstairs. I was sleeping and woke up from that loud noise. I immediately started running. My neighbor was screaming very loudly, "Save my child." The fire was very big and it couldn't be put out right away. People were being carried out from the balconies.
Ilona and her 85-year-old grandmother, who were sleeping in their apartment on the 3rd floor at the time of the strike, miraculously were not harmed. Both of them just got scared. Meanwhile, on the other side of the wall, emergency rescuers were pulling the body of a 12-year-old girl from the rubble. A concrete slab fell on the child. Yesterday, I saw her from the balcony.
Yesterday, I saw that girl from the balcony with her father. She was going out to the car. She and her father were going somewhere, either walking or driving. The girl was in the bedroom where the strike hit.
It was right here that, in the first minutes, the rescuers managed, you could say, to save 3 people, to make sure that there was definitely no one left under the rubble.
And this is already another place, also in Kyiv, the Institute of Cardiology and Minister Zhesko. In the morning, a fragment of an enemy Shahed drone flew right into the nurses' station on the 4th floor. At the moment of impact, there was a nurse there who, even during the air raid, was doing her job and died. Nearby, in the adjacent ward, her patient was found with no signs of life. However, all the other 150 people in this building with heart conditions were also on the edge. A
major psychological trauma has been inflicted on patients with cardiovascular diseases, which can lead to complications.
In total, as a result of the subsequent Russian combined attacks in Kyiv, 4 deaths are known, and there is destruction at 20 locations in the capital. Continuous ruins and devastation from the attacks are what the suburbs of the capital look like at the moment. As a result of the enemy attack, people's homes have been destroyed here and an entire street has essentially been wiped out. Piles of bricks, twisted rebar and cars burned to the ground. These are scenes as if after an apocalypse. This is what the residential complex in Petropavlivska-Borshchahivka looks like now. This location in the Kyiv region suffered perhaps the most.
We were sleeping, the clock was set. At 6 o'clock, the window started exploding, and then there was a whistle like a rocket. It flies and explodes.
I was in area of Polvoshcha. I was in the shelter. I heard the whistle of a rocket flying, and then I closed the door and heard the explosion, and that was it. Darkness.
Marina shows the shelter in her own house where they hid during the attack. The blast wave tore out the armored doors here, and on the steps you can see drops of her son's blood. When he heard the powerful explosion, he ran barefoot over the shards of glass to the shelter.
All of this debris was flying right here, directly at him, and he miraculously survived this harrowing ordeal.
Only by some miracle did all the neighbors survive, even though nothing but a pile of construction debris was left of their houses.
Right behind this little wall, a small child was sleeping. The wall cracked, but the child survived, everyone survived, and that's it. We're just happy that we made it through.
Well, now it's time to analyze the current situation on the Kupiansk front. The enemy army's bloody rampage continues here as well. Yesterday, there were 6 attacks by the invaders on the Kupiansk front. Our defenders repelled enemy assault actions near the settlement of Petropavlivka and towards Pischane and Bohuslavka. Vladimir Zelensky promised to organize a massive blackout in Moscow if the Russian army continues to attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure. How will Ukraine turn off the lights and heat for Moscow residents? That's exactly what we'll talk about next.
Russia, including Muscovites, should get ready for a cold and harsh winter. If the Russian Federation does not stop its strikes on Ukraine's energy facilities, Moscow will face a blackout.
There's no need to be overly cautious in our rhetoric with the Russians. If Russia sets the goal of a blackout in Ukraine and pursues this goal every winter, I'm not sure that our response or that of our other partners should be any different. If they threaten a blackout, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, then the Kremlin should know that there will be a blackout in the capital of Russia as well.
The Ukrainian defense industry and domestic production of drones and missiles are the best arguments in any negotiations with Putin. The Kremlin only understands the language of force.
If any attempts to attack the Kremlin are indeed made, how exactly will we then perceive that particular situation?
Well, essentially, our Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the President, has already spoken on this topic. So it's better not to even talk about it. And everyone understands that.
For the first time since the beginning of the war, on the eve of winter, Ukraine, thanks to its own production and deliveries from allies, has achieved parity in long-range capabilities with the occupiers.
Taking into account the climatic features of the Russian Federation and the tactical and technical characteristics of the Ukrainian strike systems, the Russian Federation is facing a harsh winter, both literally and figuratively. First and foremost, this concerns thermal power plants and other production facilities that sustain the life of major Russian cities.
To strike border regions and cities near Ukraine, Kyiv has a wide range of Western missiles at its disposal.
After the recent statement by the Ukrainian president about his conversation with Trump, during which the issue of striking energy facilities in the Russian Federation was raised as a retaliatory measure by Ukraine in response to hostile actions from the Russian side, the corresponding approval was received. Therefore, we can say that the territories of the Rostov, Kursk, Belgorod, and Bryansk regions are within range of these strikes. As Western strike systems, this has been emphasized once again, such as the Scalp, Storm Shadow, as well as the modernized version of the S-200 surface-to-air missile system, are capable of reaching them.
The systematic destruction of Russian oil refineries by Ukrainian drones shows that Russian air defense is incapable of protecting critical infrastructure facilities.
In several districts of the Belgorod region, only a 100 gasoline and diesel fuel are available at gas stations. Subscribers are also reporting fuel problems in the Nizhny Novgorod and Samara regions. It would be pretty epic if in the 4th year of the war we still can't take out their energy sector, but they manage to take out ours.
If, for strikes on the Russian border regions, Ukraine can use Western missiles and its own drones. For Moscow and other remote cities of Erythrea, the threat comes from the Ukrainian flaming, with a strike range of up to 3,000 kilometers and a warhead weighing 1,000 kilograms.
Usually the warhead of a modern cruise missile is 450, but at most 500 kilograms. As a rule, almost all missiles have a 450 kilogram warhead. What does a 1-ton warhead provide? If such a missile hits a target, for example, an industrial facility, 2 of these missiles will completely disable it for at least a year. The resulting crater alone would be about 20 meters in diameter.
A mirror response will definitely come, once again trying to cut off electricity and heat for Ukrainians. The Russian leadership will introduce millions of Russians to the experience of all these blackout strikes.
Now let's analyze the operational situation on the Novopavlivka sector of the front. The Russian world continues here as well to destroy, kill and maim. On the Novopavlivka direction, the enemy carried out 21 attacks in the areas of the settlements of Sekneve, Podubne, Novoselivka, Sosnivka, Molivka, Novonikolayivka, Berezova and Novohrihorivka. Ukrainian soldiers carried out a unique operation. With the help of an FPV drone, a Russian Mi-8 helicopter was shot down, and we will definitely show you this footage. Also, Russian troops have not advanced in the Sumy region. They are experiencing logistical problems in the Pokrovsk direction and a shortage of personnel on the Donetsk-Dnipropetrovsk front line. Detailed situations on the battlefields are in our military review.
The Russian city of Belgorod was left without electricity and hot water after a missile strike by the Ukrainian Air Force. According to the local publication Pepel, one of the missiles hit the Belgorod thermal power plant. There was also a strike on the city substation Luch. Parts of Stary Oskol, Shebekino and several other settlements in the region were also left without electricity.
Moreover, these are exclusively retaliatory actions by the Ukrainian side. During conversations with Trump, the Ukrainian president emphasized that the actions of the Russian side are aimed at creating a so-called blackout.
On the night of September 29th, drones also damaged infrastructure in the Moscow region. That same night, the Korochevsky electro-detailed plant in Russia's Bryansk region was damaged. This enterprise was responsible for assembling and repairing modern weapons for the Russian army.
The products are used in the aerospace, electronic instrument manufacturing, construction, and other industries. Specifically, we're talking about connectors for printed circuit boards in military equipment, aircraft, antennas, bases, stations, and other systems, as well as accordingly components for measuring instruments.
Pilots of the 59th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine are successfully destroying enemy equipment on the front lines of the Russian-Ukrainian war. With an FPV drone, they managed to shoot down a Russian Mi-28 helicopter. Partisans infiltrated the ranks of the enemy army and helped disable a Russian Pantsir S-1 in the Kherson region for several months. As a result, the incident created a gap in the air defense system in this direction. This was reported by the partisan movement Otesh. Russian troops are unable to advance in the Sunga region in the Zaporizhia and Kherson directions. The occupiers are also experiencing logistical problems in the Pokrovsk direction and a shortage of personnel on the Donetsk-Dnipropetrovsk front, although they are advancing there, albeit slowly.
At the moment, the strategic objective of the Russian occupation army is to reach the administrative border of the Donetsk region. It is there that the main efforts and main forces of the occupation army are concentrated. It is precisely in the Donetsk direction that additional units are being transferred from the Svatov and accordingly Kherson areas to break through the Ukrainian defenses.
The level of desertion in the Russian army is increasing. In 2025, 1/10 of the entire Russian contingent in Ukraine deserted. In numbers, that's 70,000 people. This is reported by analysts from the Ukrainian OSINT project for intelligence insight.
First and foremost, we're talking about colossal losses of personnel and the tactics of so-called local assaults. That's why the Russians understand perfectly well that participating in assault operations is essentially a one-way ticket.
Russians are using tankers to launch and control drones in European countries. Citing intelligence data, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated,
At the time of the airspace violation in Poland by Russian drones, a cargo ship was detained in the Kiel Canal, according to German counterintelligence and law enforcement agencies. It was from this very cargo ship that the drones were launched over Germany and several other European countries. The crew of the cargo ship, which was sailing under the flag of a third country, consisted of citizens of the Russian Federation. Moreover, such examples of using the so-called shadow fleet are not isolated incidents.
Russia has refused both bilateral and even trilateral peace talks, but it must wake up and recognize reality. The reality is that Russians are killing many people, while also suffering heavy losses themselves, which they cannot boast about. This was stated by US Vice President J.D. Vance, who added that the Donald Trump administration still seeks peace, but steps are needed from both sides to achieve it.
And now let's move to the Lyman and Siversk directions of the front. Let's be honest. These are sacred targets for Putin and his cronies. Accordingly, the situation here is also stretched to the limit. In the Lyman direction, the enemy attacked 15 times, trying to break through the defenses near the settlements of Shandryholov, Kolodyazy, and Torsky. In the Siversk direction, the aggressor made 6 attempts to break through in the areas of Serebryanka, Fedorivka, and towards Dronivka. To shoot down Russian drones over Ukrainian territory, even without coordination with other NATO members. This is exactly the decision that the Polish Ministry of Defense is preparing. The recent attack by Russian UAVs was a cold shower for official Warsaw. Poland is becoming increasingly active in helping Ukraine and is distancing itself less and less from Ukraine's war with Russia. Let's take a closer look at this right now.
Poland is taking a step that could radically change the rules of the game in the skies over Eastern Europe.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is not just the most serious conflict in Europe since World War II. It is a turning point. The old international order is collapsing before our eyes. The world has entered a new and dangerous era of great power rivalry, rule-breaking, and testing the limits of what is permissible. How far can things go before someone says a clear enough stop? As we continue to talk about peace and security, we are obliged to back up these words with concrete actions.
Warsaw is preparing a law that will give its military the right to shoot down Russian drones and even aircraft over the territory of Ukraine and Belarus without prior approval from NATO or the EU. Until now, Polish troops have had to operate within strict limits. The 2022 law required additional approvals not only from the president and government, but also from NATO, the EU, and the country where Polish forces were to operate. This bureaucracy effectively paralyzed Warsaw's ability to respond quickly to threats. Now, however, the new coalition led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk is proposing a fundamentally different approach. Shoot first, ask questions later. The draft amendments have already been submitted by the Ministry of Defense, but will not be considered under an expedited procedure.
Just like in the ongoing situation in Ukraine, this will undoubtedly have a much broader and more significant impact than simply moving crews to retrieve those specific ships that were originally built for us abroad at one particular time. In
essence, this is about restoring the Polish army's freedom of action.
The decision will be delegated to the executive branch. In other words, there will be no need for any parliamentary democratic procedures for this. All of this will be handed over to the military. And the military, based on intelligence data, coordination with the Ukrainian side, with NATO, and with anyone else they choose, will make decisions in a closed setting as they see fit from a military standpoint. In other words, the war is shifting from the public sphere of decisions made by democratic bodies to the sphere of decisions made by the military. And this precisely indicates that Poland is now much closer to war than it was before.
This step was a response not only to the increase in Russian aggression, but also to actual incidents. In September, for the first time in its history, Poland shot down Russian drones that had crossed into its airspace. Now Warsaw wants to secure the right to act preemptively, to shoot down drones even while they're still over Ukrainian territory. In recent years, Poland has been actively strengthening its eastern border. Along the borders with Russia and Belarus, construction of the fortification line known as the Eastern Shield continues. We're talking about 400 kilometers of defensive fortifications, trenches, concrete tank traps, and engineering barriers. Moscow responds to this in its usual manner.
Putin calls Poland's plans utter nonsense and insists that Russia has no intention of attacking NATO. At the same time, he repeats the claim that it is actually the West that is allegedly planning aggression against Russia.
They've made up this story that Russia wants to attack NATO. Are you completely out of your minds? Are you as dumb as this table? Who came up with this? This nonsense, you understand? Utter nonsense?
By the way, Bonkany was saying the same thing back in 2019, 3 years before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Despite all the problems with Ukraine, the speculation around Crimea and Donbas, everyone understands perfectly well that Russia is not planning to attack anyone. It's just nonsense, utter nonsense.
But reality says otherwise. In order not to become another victim of aggression and to prevent a repeat of the Ukrainian scenario, Poland is decisively strengthening its defenses, building fortification lines, modernizing its army, and seeking the right to act preemptively in the skies. These steps are not symbolic, but a pragmatic survival strategy in the face of increased Russian aggression. Poland wants to make it clear that it is ready not just to support Ukraine, but together with Ukraine, to prevent any further expansion from the Kremlin.
That's all for today, but very soon on Front News, you'll see new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, brought to you so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.